during this time, there's going to be a lot of people who are struggling.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's really about, I guess, letting people know that they don't have to struggle alone, that it's okay to ask for help, and perhaps there are elements of those people who share their stories who the listeners can resonate with and take something on board for their own journey. Do you find that certain situations for yourself tend to exacerbate your stammer, or is it just kind of no real rhyme or reason to it?
Yeah, it used to be honest, anytime speaking to a stranger, anytime in a pressured situation,
Yeah.
it used to be worse. Like nowadays, there's no speaking situation that I'll go into fearful or anything. I'm quite willing. You know, there's nothing that phases me, even if I go into a situation and I block on every word and I stutter badly. I don't have that emotional attachment to my blocks anymore. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's no speaking situation that I would actively avoid. But yeah, it used to be, you know, speaking to a stranger, being put on the spot or any pressured situation. So that was quite a lot, really. I was fine with my family, fine with my close friends.
Yeah.
But then the minute, say, me and my close friends went out for food or went into a new environment, then I would go from, you know, the loud one of the lads to very quiet and held back, just literally in a flick of a switch. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all been a learning curve, and even though I'm confident in my speech now, I've still got those, you know, 18 years of anxieties and insecurities. So it's still a learning curve, you know, still working on certain aspects. It's not like I went on that course and now I'm perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we've still got a lot of way to go, but I know that it's a journey at the end of the day, and I'm confident and content of where I'm at now. And I think that's somewhere that I've never been before, really. I've always been unhappy, but, you know, even though I know there's a long way to go, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at now. So that's always a good thing. Having that support network has probably helped me the most. Having that group of friends that I can talk to on a deeper level when needed, as well as just having a laugh with. And yeah, but mindfulness has helped. You know, I don't think it would for me, and it doesn't work for me all the time. I'm not someone who does it every day, but I know when I need it, I can just use it, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, it's like a tool in the tool belt that you can access when you require.
Yeah, exactly. And just the podcast has helped me a lot. Just having something to focus on, having that sort of side hustle of the podcast, and just, you know, as I've interviewed people who've been on TV, interviewed people who won Paralympic gold medals, stuff like that. It's like, it makes you feel really like, how did I end up here? You know, I've said that on a few interviews. I've literally said, how the hell did I end up here?
Yeah.
And it's just finding stuff, as I said in the interview, finding something that is good for you, really, and keeps you going. So yeah, it's quite simple when you think about it, you know, just having that support network and finding something you enjoy doing.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Mate, and you have tuned into the In-Betweeners Checkup. I'm here today with Callum Schofield, all the way over in the UK. Great thing about technology is distance is no longer a factor. He is going to be sharing with us his story over the last little bit, and I guess talking to us about really what's been going on in his world and how we can all learn from what he has to offer. So Callum, I'm going to offer it over to you, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first I want to say thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm really looking forward to sharing my story and hope I'll be of some value to you and your listeners.
Yes, I appreciate that. And look, I think at the end of the day, if we can touch one person with something from the story, I feel it can offer value. So if you mind, I guess for those who aren't necessarily familiar with yourself, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, well, as I said, my name's Callum Schofield. I'm from the UK. A little bit about me. You might not be able to tell now, but for 18 years, I suffered from a severe stutter. So I was growing up, I couldn't say my own name. I
Mm.
couldn't say my address. I couldn't say how old I was. I couldn't say my family's names. I would avoid all speaking situations. Leaving the house, I become very anxious. I would hate going out, even going out for food. And not being able to speak was making my life hell, really.
Yeah.
And it took 18 years of struggle to actually decide to do something about it. As, for example, if you asked me to do this podcast just a year ago, there would have been no chance I would have ever even considered it.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I mean, for just um, don't want, for most people, doing a podcast can be a great challenge in itself, I guess. You add in that extra dynamic and it really adds to things. Can you, I guess I've come across a few people in the past who have had stutters or the stammers as such like, and in recruitment days I actually placed a guy into a role. But can you talk us through, I guess, what can cause it, perhaps?
Yeah, well, there's not really any solid research around stuttering or stammering, which I think makes it that bit harder for anyone who has a stutter or stammer because they don't really know what caused it. But it can be caused by genetics. For example, if you have parents who stammer, there's not a good chance, but there's more chance the child will. It can be caused by emotional trauma growing up through childhood, but it normally comes in the developmental stage between the ages of 4 to 7.
Okay.
And it can also be caused, like, for example, if someone has an accident and hits their head,
Yeah.
that can cause a stutter. And yeah, they're the main causes, really, but there's nothing set in stone of what actually causes one.
So I guess during those younger years when you had that difficulty, how did you communicate with the world?
Well, to be honest, I avoided a lot of, if not every situation I could. So I was seen as a very shy person, a quiet person, very held back, reserved, didn't really put myself out there at all. So, and when I had to communicate, when there was a situation when I couldn't, my speech would be terrible. I would be blocking and stammering on practically every word. And that has put me off speaking even more. And it's important to remember that I still do have a stutter. I still stutter and stammer every now and again, but it doesn't control me or affect me. It's not something that can be cured.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to get across as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's quite a good thing to really, it's part of, I guess, acknowledging the different struggles as we have is being able to accept that, hey, maybe this isn't something that can just be dealt with and then it's gone, but this is kind of potentially a lifelong situation that you have to deal with, whether it's a stutter or some kind of illness or whatever the case may be. When, I guess, just out of interest, given your speech was, I'm going to say, restricted in a sense, did you find your expression through writing flourish at all?
Yeah, it's funny to say that, as when I was growing up, going through school, I was very good at English. I was very good at writing and creating stuff with regards to words. I was very good at writing little stories, anything like that. Anything to do with reading and writing, I really enjoyed to do. And I think that is because that was my way of communicating. Even though I couldn't read out in class, for example, I could write down what I wanted to say and it would still be equal to what people were saying.
Yeah. And like those, I'm going to call it teenage years, are always difficult. You're that much more self-conscious. In terms of building, I guess, peers around you when there was that difficulty communicating them in a verbal standpoint, and perhaps you being seen to be a little bit different to the status quo, how was that situation to work through?
Yeah, it was a challenge, as I did have a small group of friends, but even in that group of friends, I didn't really express myself a lot because I
Mm,
was very self-conscious. And when I spoke, if I had people laugh at me, people make fun of me, then, as you said, you don't want to be different from the crowd. You don't want to break the norm. So in my head, when I was growing up, was if I don't speak, if I stay quiet, then I'll just be a quiet person. I won't be
mm,
a different person. So it was a challenge. And as a result, I was sort of left behind in some ways socially when it comes to social interactions and friendship relationships and just building up that authentic sort of connection with people.
mm.
I always felt years behind because growing up through secondary school, etc., I was held back. I didn't put myself out there at all. And it's only when I started to get older, I started to do that. And everyone else had years ahead of me in that sense. That was still quite a bit of a learning curve again.
Yeah. So was there, I guess, a particular situation or event that was the turning point for you kind of wanting to make a change in your life?
I don't think it's like one specific event or something, but when I turned 18, it was sort of a reality check. I realized enough was enough as I finished my A levels. I was working a job that I didn't particularly like, but I thought I'd be stuck there for the rest of my life. So,
Mm,
and because I was 18, I thought, it's time to do something for myself. As when you're younger, it's normal you have to get your parents involved to do anything and this and that. I thought, no, it's actually time to take responsibility, step and do something. So I found this speech course, which is a 3-day program called the Starfish Project.
okay.
And it sounds cliche, but just last September, so 10 months ago, I went down to this course, this 3-day course, and it changed my life. It really did. And I was ready. I think that's the main thing. As I could have went when I was younger,
Mm,
but it wouldn't have had the impact it would have because when I went, I wanted it. I
yeah.
had enough and I was looking for that change.
Okay. And what took place during that course, if I can ask?
It's a breathing technique they teach called coastal breathing, which is when you use that technique perfectly, really, you won't stammer, you won't stutter. So that's the physical side. What they teach you is acceptance. They teach you about it's okay to have a stammer, it's okay to have a stutter, it doesn't really make you any different. There's nothing you can't do. And yeah, the technique has helped me communicate better and give me the confidence to communicate, if anything. But that mindset, switching my mindset, building that mental resilience, and that's what I've been working on over the last few months with another charity called Stop Holding Back, which is another stammering charity. And between Starfish Project and Stop Holding Back, that's built up my mindset, built up my mental resilience, my mental strength, and that has been the main difference.
Oh, that's really lovely. I mean, you talked about earlier that not wanting to um, break the norm as such, and you've taken this, you've made a transition, as it were, in your life, and you've taken responsibility, and with what you're doing now, it's like you're in essence creating a new norm within the world, and starting a movement, dare I say it. So good on you. During that school period, was there much in the way of support as someone who was going through that situation, whether it be within or outside of the school?
It's hard to say because even though it was very obvious I stuttered, I would do everything to hide it. If someone mentioned it to me, I would shut it down instantly. That includes my close family.
Hmm.
Whenever my mother would talk about it or say that I need more confidence in myself and my speech, I would shut it down. And yeah, so that was one of the main problems in school. I was so focused on avoiding that if I probably opened up, if I spoke about my stammer, then it might have made a difference. I know there's not a lot of support out there as such. They should be a lot more, in my opinion.
Mm.
But I feel like if I actually looked for it, I could have found it, but I was desperately trying to hide it. Even though it was
Yeah.
obvious to everyone,
Yeah.
I would still do everything I could to hide it, avoid it, and not talk about it in hope that people will notice.
Mm. Okay. And look, I think it's, in some respects, it can kind of be the elephant in the room, and everyone's aware of it, but no one's really talking about it. And I guess for yourself to be ready to acknowledge it is really the first step in making a change. With what you've been doing in respect to going out there and talking about this situation, probably I'm thinking to youth and maybe others as well, what's sort of been the response or the feedback?
Oh, it's been a brilliant response, really, as when you're open and honest, that encourages other people to be open and honest too. You know, when I first shared my story and spoke openly about my stammer, the response I had was brilliant. It was very moving. I was messages off people who I didn't know or people who I knew but thought they would never speak to me, for example. My story was read and viewed all over the world in over 30 countries, and that response was something I never expected, because it was such a burden, such a stigma in my eyes that I tried hiding it for so long. If speaking about it openly and sort of saying, yes, I am a stammer, but that doesn't define me. I'm not a stammerer. It's just part of me. It's just a part of me that I'm in control of now and I don't care about.
Yeah.
That was a turning point, and yeah, it really made a big difference for me, because having that good response made me sort of realize that not so much I was worrying about nothing, but it still had a massive impact on me.
Yeah.
But it was a weight off my shoulders, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you talked about that burden, and in some respects, it's, I don't necessarily want to say it's not a burden in some form, but you've been able to turn that around and I guess create an opportunity out of that in terms of helping others with their burden. So um, that's really amazing. I guess what's kind of, have you a bit of a plan as to where you want to take things, or what you're sort of working towards? I mean, you mentioned you're involved with a couple sort of support groups.
Well, basically, I'm just trying to take each day as it comes,
Yeah.
work on my own speech, my own personal development first, and help others along the way, as I'm part of the charity Stop Holding Back, and I'm really enjoying that. I'm loving being a part of that, and hopefully we can grow as well as an organisation. That'll be brilliant, as I'm supporting them, and I always will also support the Starfish project that I went on. And it's basically not just about stammering and stuttering for me. It's, if anyone has got something that they're struggling with, I want to not even help them as such, because I'm no expert, but if I can just make it easier, if I can do something, I have even the slightest impact to make them feel better about their insecurities, make them feel better about themselves, then that's all I'm trying to do, really. I'm just trying to be the best version of myself I can be and help others in whatever way I can.
Yeah. And look, I think that's really commendable. And I think in some token, I would like to think a lot of people are trying to do that in some way. And the interesting thing, I guess, for myself is I had this idea of helping people in the past, and when someone would come to me with a problem, I would offer a solution. But people aren't always looking for solutions to their problem. Sometimes they're just wanting to be heard. You know? And so as great it is that you, I guess, have that ability to speak to people, well, I would imagine that through that process, you also develop really strong listening skills, as well as sort of the reading and writing. So if you can allow space for someone to share what it is that they're struggling with, I think that's amazing. And if you can offer words of support without necessarily helping them, then that's great as well. So I wish you well on that journey, because it's something myself and a few others are definitely trying to achieve in some respect. And I would like to think that by being vulnerable, we give others the opportunity to be vulnerable as well, and to share that burden amongst and lighten the load, as it were. Do you mind me asking what you're looking to do work-wise now?
Well, in September, I'm starting university to do counselling and mental health.
Awesome.
And that's what, it's not like a cliche, but it was a bit of an epiphany. It came out of nowhere. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. As I was working in McDonald's, hating everything really.
Yeah.
I wasn't a very pleasant person to be around. And then I sort of started to work on my speech, work on my personal development. And it sort of literally just came to me sort of, I'm good at helping people. I've mentored people in the past 6 months. So why don't I actually pursue that? So yeah, counselling and mental health is what I'll be studying. And the dream is to have my own sort of counselling and coaching practice in the long run.
Awesome. Well, look, I mean, you look at how far you've come in 12 months. I mean, who's to say, what the next few years might bring for you? And having that, I'm going to say, momentum behind you is really, and I guess having the confidence in yourself now that you have is really going to make things happen. I mean, so often we put things in mental blocks or obstacles in our way that stop us from achieving things. it's been quite interesting because initially, I mean, I'm still early stages, but I kind of started this process, and I was kind of talking to people who were of a similar age to me, perhaps a little bit older. And maybe over the last sort of month or so, I've been talking to some younger people, and they're just so switched on. And I just think, man, if I'd been like that when I was young, that would have been awesome. But invariably, each person has faced some kind of adversity. And it's been that going through that experience where they've really grown as an individual, which has allowed them to kind of come out the other side where they are.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what age you are. There's still stuff that you can offer the world. And in some respects, I feel younger people, I'm talking generally here, they've had less knockbacks in their life. And so they tend to view the world with less filters. So they're generally more open to things. But I mean, I'm talking generally, and there's going to be exceptions to the rule, as it were.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, though. Yeah, I'd agree with you, as I know I've had quite a few struggles, and people, some of my friends view things completely differently to me because they've not had no struggles, but they've had it pretty easy compared to myself and others. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and what I can find is sometimes it's not so much the specific struggle that someone has faced, but the story that they've created around that struggle. That is where the true challenge lies, as it were. Because someone can make, I guess, relatively speaking, a small situation into a big situation, and so for them, it is all-encompassing. And it's only really when you hear about people who are truly struggling with something that it actually gives you some kind of perception to go, oh, actually, it's what I'm dealing with isn't really that big a deal. But when it's in your head and it's just going round and round in circles, it shapes your reality. So
oh yeah, it really does. Yeah.